Alrighty. I think we're up and running. Check this. Yes, indeed. So we'll wait a little bit, see if people come up, which they very well may. As always, I'm watching the chat as well as the viewer list, and I'm very excited for this particular one. One reason that I'm very happy is essentially because I've already got X-23 prepped and ready to go. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and hop into the training room so that I can get started as soon as maybe one or two people show up. Doop doop doo. Do do a do do do. She is pretty cool. I messed around with her earlier. She's a lot of fun. I had fun with her anyway. That was pretty cool. So just wait a little bit here.
Why do you fight?
I actually don't really know much about the attacks. I'm just messing around. Whoa, that looks really cool. Thankfully, I actually managed to get all of her uniques, which are technically in the game, but the graphics are not. So I'm excited to see we've got a couple people, so I can actually go ahead and get started. Incidentally, the first thing I wanted to mention, I know that I'm late to this particular party because she was up all weekend and all that stuff, but for those of you who have watched my videos before, you know I wasn't here, but I really wanted to get in on this particular one because not only is she a really cool character in general, but I'm just really excited to see some of the other cool stuff that Gazillion is adding. So with that, I'll go ahead and just get started straight off with her power set. So we've got three power trees here. We've got the Adamantium Claws, the Deadly Operative, and the Lethal Acrobatics. Obviously, the one big question that everybody had was, is she going to be a clone of Wolverine? Because in the comics, obviously, she is a literal clone of Wolverine, and that's one of the things that I'll be talking about later. As you can see in the title, I'll be talking all about science of cloning, or at least a good portion of it. But for now, I'll just be discussing X-23, her abilities, and all that good stuff. Before I get too much into all the powers themselves, though, I do want to say, so first we do have this funny glitch here with her ultimate upgrade. It's not actually active yet, and you can see here I have all of her uniques equipped, but the problem is that none of them have proper graphics yet. And if you're on the test center and you actually go to the I guess it's here. Yeah. If you go to the DPS testing box, then you actually get the graphics for Storm's items. So obviously that's going to change soon enough. I know that somebody posted something where they actually have the images, though. So if you want to see those. Either way, her slot 1 unique is the Mark of the Unipower, which is something that she was infused with in the comic books. I don't remember exactly when, but I vaguely remember I read her Wikipedia page, and apparently she is the one of only a handful of people that got picked twice to be infused with the Unipower or something along those lines. Again, I don't remember exactly what, but incidentally, very powerful, just like so many heroes, lots of crit damage, lots of crit rating, and just like her father, brother, clone, whatever, Wolverine, a ton of bleed effects as well, which is always awesome to see. Actually, I forgot to move back over to the chat so I can see if anybody's trying to ask anything. All right, so that's the Mark of the Unipower, and then you got the all-new X-Men bodysuit, which is kind of cool because you get both the physical specific as well as the regular total defense rating, and melee powers, health, durability, which is really nice. Obviously, just in general to have. And one thing I didn't mention is her secondary resource is actually called Wrath. She doesn't have Spirit, so that's kind of cool. And again, which makes sense because of her upbringing in the lab and all that kind of stuff. She has a great deal of anger that needs to come out. So a lot of pretty cool things in the bodysuit, and incidentally, plus for the tree, the Deadly Operative tree. So the Kinney family locket. This is actually the only one of these that I got because unfortunately I didn't have enough splinters and/or G to get more. I was hoping I'd be able to get a couple more so I could see ranges on some of these numbers, but it's fairly impressive. We got health regen again. We got brutal and crit. We've got just straight up health, and not only that, but a dodge proc, which is pretty awesome, as well as just the straight up melee power proc, which obviously that's pretty much all of her abilities. And then new X-Men boots, again other bleed powers as well as movement powers, which is kind of cool because she does have quite a few of those in her acrobatics tree, which is pretty nice. And then the X-Force mask, which is kind of funny because Wolverine also has an X-Force. I guess it's X-Force leader for him technically, but either way, again, crit, 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 lots and lots of crit stuff, as well as a proc for when you critically hit as well. So overall, you can see a little bit of range on some of these numbers. You can see the percentage chance for the bleed is different, but the damage itself is the same. And you always get the other 3 stacks, and it also has the secondary proc, just like Magneto's does, once you have enough stacks as well. I mean, pretty decent ones. You can see here for this one, I got the 9% versus the 5% on the one that I don't have equipped for the wrath cost decrease. Fairly large spread in health, but we always typically, or not always typically, but we typically will see that with a lot of these. I mean, just a fairly standard spread of capability and differences in the numbers. This one is actually really interesting. Should have equipped this. The other new X-Men's boots that I've got actually gives +2 strength rather than just +1, which is kind of cool. So that's nice to see. And not really a whole lot else. That's the Mark of the Unipower. Like I said, I didn't get any of the other lockets, so I can't really talk about those too much. But a decent amount of spread with the other 4 uniques that I got, and you know, a fair amount with the health proc. You notice that it's always the 33% when it drops below that. So if it drops below a third, but then the damage decrease does change. So that's kind of interesting, kind of a big deal. I would imagine that you can also get +2 durability, just like with the what's it called? Where I had the +2 strength instead with the boots. That's what it was, right? So with that, let's quit talking about that and jump right into all of her powers. So again, we've got Adamantium Claws, the Deadly Operative, and the Lethal Acrobatics. So the Lethal Acrobatics, like I said, is where a couple of movement powers exist, which is kind of cool. The Adamantium Claws, obviously, she has adamantium claws, and she's going to slice a mother up. And she does it quite efficiently, actually. But you can see that these are bugged in several different ways. Like, for example, you can see the wrath costs are all redded out as if I don't have enough when I clearly do. So that's obviously something that's going to be fixed at some point. The graceful maneuver is just your basic movement here, which looks kind of cool. I am surprised it's not in the acrobatics tree though, but who really cares? So this is one of the passives that she gets. I think she gets 2 other one, or 1 other one rather, but 2 total. I think. I'm not certain now. I only went through really quickly. Either way, this is one of them where you can see you're able to see bad guys on the mini map, which is always nice. You do have the block, which is kind of cool. And if you remember with Magneto, one of the biggest issues during testing was he had very little survivability, whereas X-23 is pretty much the exact opposite of that. So it's pretty insane. You see, she does get a health regen with this, and not only that, but it boosts itself up when you're below 50%. So that's pretty cool. Similarly to Nightcrawler, she has stances, and you can pick one or the other. You've got the fluid stance, which increases your dodge, crit hit, and damage rating, and then you can also do a couple of different things with the powers. So the twirling lunge, which is one of these over here, I think. I can't remember it now. Must be one of these. There it is, the twirling lunge, and then the rending leap and cleaving claws. There's the rending leap, and cleaving claws. There you are, the cleaving claws. So you can see it allows you to stack the bleed effect. So that's kind of cool. Just a bunch of different things depending on the powers. Again, just like Magneto, it seems like this is going to be a theme, at least for the next few heroes potentially, where not only do you have the choices between two different powers, but my dog's barking. Hang on one second. So anyway, if you see the two different stances or two different whatevers, two options that you have, come on back inside, doggy. Whatever the options are, they affect the other powers in some form or another. And because they affect the powers in some form or another, then you're either going to probably use one of the other two trees more than the other one, because just like with Nightcrawler or with Magneto, you cannot have both of these things active at the same time. It's either one or the other, and it says if you use the other another stance, then it goes away. Okay, so that's kind of cool. It's just a neat thing to have. And incidentally, that one passive is her only passive, and my dog is going crazy, unfortunately. So I'm going to start off with Adamantium Claws, with just showing you guys what the abilities are. So we've got the Cleaving Claws, which is your starting basic power, and then the Crimson Sweep, which is fairly similar, looking at least, to Wolverine's variation on this. And again, you do get the vulnerability, which is kind of cool. And you get so you see here it says the physical damage, you get it twice per second for 3 seconds with the bleed, and it stacks up to 3 times. And you notice with the Crimson Sweep, it says that it applies a stack of Cleaving Claws. So that's kind of just a thing to note. And then Rip to Shreds, this is, again, you get vulnerability, and you get, again, an effect with the Cleaving Claws, so everything is synergizing back to the original basic, which is kind of cool, I think. So it means that there's quite a lot going on just from the basic power, which is pretty nifty. And on top of that, when you hit with the basic, you gain Wrath as well, which is pretty cool. So I'll just go ahead and equip most of these here. So we'll start with this, and then we'll go slash and hack. It's going to be interesting to see how these are synergized. Again, I did this with Magneto. I am not a theory crafter by any means, and I don't pretend to be. So I'm just doing the things that I enjoy, that I think are kind of cool. What I just did is actually the buff at the bottom here. Oops, wrong button. The buff here, Seeing Red. So not only does it restore your wrath, but you get a whole bunch of really cool things. Where again, it goes back to Cleaving Claws. Each time you have that effect, then you restore Wrath again. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like, everything not only goes back to Cleaving Claws, but it just does a sick fat amount of damage. So this right here, this is just your basic Cleaving Claws, just the basic attack, and you can see the bleed effect going on right there. Okay, and then we'll have the slash and hack, which is just, one of the cool things about this is you actually use the foot claws as well, which I think is nifty. But it does do a substantial amount more damage, and again, depending on where you are at with the Cleaving Claws, it makes it that much better. So what does this say? Oh, that's so nice. Null Rage is hosting me. Well, that's nice of him. Well, thank you very much. So either way, back to it. The slash and hack is everything in Adamantium Claws just stacks off of the basic of Cleaving Claws. The one that I just used there is the Bloody Harvest, which is kind of nifty. It's a little bit of a jump, and the really nice thing about this is not only does it give you a solid amount of AoE damage, it barely costs any Wrath. You can see my Wrath is going down, but extremely slowly, which is really, really helpful. And now all of these guys pretty much have bleed effects on them, which is really obviously good for later on. Okay, so that's a really good solid AoE, as is this one right here, the Crimson Sweep, which again, very similar to Wolverine's version, I guess you could call it, of that, which off the top of my head I don't remember the name of. But oh, that one's dead. Give me my Wrath back. So the rotation here is definitely interesting, because as long as you come back to the Crimson Claw, or the Cleaving Claws, I apologize, then you're going to be that much better off, because not only does it restore your Wrath, but when you apply those stacks, And when the other powers apply those stacks, then all of the other ones have a lot more damage going for them as well. And I just used this one, the disembowel, but I wasn't close to anything. So here you go. This one's kind of cool. When the cooldown is actually reduced by 4 seconds when you hit a bleeding enemy. Let's actually see if that works. So we'll get this guy bleeding. Right, so he's got a bleeding effect, and then we'll do that, and you see it went from 7 to 3 instantly. So that, again, everything is synergizing with itself, which is really cool. And since I am saying synergize so much, I forgot to mention what her specific synergy is, which is the DOT power damage and movement power spirit cost. So again, they do go back to her specific abilities because damage over time, obviously bleed effects, and then the movement powers are really in that acrobatics tree. Okay, so that was actually the entirety of the adamantium claws, and you saw a whole lot of pretty devastating capabilities there. I'm personally a big fan of the Crimson Sweep here, and also the whoops, did I forget that one? I guess I did. Oh no. Right, rip to shreds. That's the one that I forgot. I knew I forgot something. So again, the vulnerability, and again going back to the bleed. Make sure that you have all those bleeds active if you're going to go adamantium claws. Okay. So for the purposes of this, since I'm going to go into Axis, I'm going to go ahead and max out Heart of a Beast, primarily to get all of the health regen, because you can never have too much health regen, and it's really awesome. And I'm personally going to go with the Ferocious stance, because the Ferocious is extra damage for DOT powers, extra crit, and not only that, but the Rip to Shreds and the Disembowel, two of the strongest powers in that particular tree. You get additional damage. You increase the bleed duration from Cleaving Claws, so that means all of the other bonuses get that much longer to proc. Plus, when you crit or brute, then you gain accuracy, which is just ridiculous. The way that she synergizes with herself is absolutely insane. Okay, so I'm going to do the SIG right now, the Dancing Blades here, and you can see this is one similar to Nightcrawler, and who else? I think Wolverine does it, and then Moon Knight as well are the main ones that I can think of, where you can activate it multiple times in a short period. So in this case, you can do it 6 times in 15 seconds, and you notice the damage on it is pretty high. Again, right now I am at 31 because of the gear that I've got, but even so, looking at just rank 1, 17,800 to 26,000 just starting off, so pretty impressive. And again, it counts as an additional stack of Cleaving Claws bleed effect, so everything goes back to that. All right, so this is it right here. Right, again, big giant AoE damage, jumping around, being all crazy, dancing blades, hence why it's called dancing, because you're just going blah, 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 moving all crazy all around. Right? We'll get our Wrath back here with our Cleaving Claws. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Sorry, I just like that. Alright. Now, the Lethal Acrobatics. This is the one that's more movement-based, and I kind of like it because I'm a really big fan of Nightcrawler, and depending on how you play Nightcrawler, you'll either see him a little bit or you'll see him never. Because depending on if you're doing all the teleportation-based powers or if you're doing more of the sword-based powers. So for this particular one, for the Lethal Acrobatics tree, it's all based around heavy movement, going around quickly, and just doing whatever you can to stay out of the way. Okay, so here we have Lethal Claws, which is the other basic. Okay, and for this particular one, this is obviously synergizing with all the movement abilities now instead. Okay, so we'll go with the Twirling Lunge, and this one's kind of cool because you get knocked down on it. Open the Jugular. This one is interesting because you can only do it up to 3 seconds after you activate a movement power, and it is an execute power, which is similar to, I know both Nightcrawler and Psylocke have one, where it does an additional 1% damage for each percent of the missing health that the target has. So, and you notice it's grayed out because I haven't used a movement power recently, right? Rending Leap will put there, and then the Whirling Darvish. So this is a buff effect, just like we had over here with the Seeing Red. So essentially the way that X-23 is playing out is you've got two stances, one of which affects movement powers more, and one of which affects the claw powers more. And then you have two relatively short duration buffs, one of which affects more of the adamantium claws, and one of which affects the movement powers more. And actually, incidentally, speaking of which, I wanted to say to Null Rage, if he's still listening, I hope that you're feeling better, because I remember in your X-23 video you weren't feeling too good. All right. Now, moving right along, we will get our whirling Darvish going here. So this is the buff itself, and again, this is the cooldown reduction and also just the overall buff. So you get Wrath when you move and all that good things. So we're going to go ahead and just use our basic movement here, and you see Open the Jugular is now able to be used. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll into this guy's face, and then there you go. And that's Open the Jugular. You saw it was a pretty massive brutal, but the problem is since it is an execute, it's better obviously if they're much lower on damage. Okay, so these are the lethal claws right here, and you notice that just like with the Crimson claws, or the Cleaving claws rather, you do gain Wrath as you go up or as you hit. So again, don't have to worry about having to pick one or the other. Oop, that was the wrong one. I used Rip to Shreds. Woo! That one right there, that was the Cyclone Kick, jump up, spin, spin, spin. So it's nice because both of the major trees have decent AoE attacks, and you can see where the target is. I know you can't see where I'm pointing because I'm pointing at my TV, but either way, it's nice to see that she has these abilities in both cases, especially when you're talking about things like Midtown and all those kinds of places. So that's nice to see. The Twirling Lunge. This one's nice because of the shorter cooldown, and again, big AoE, potentially lots of damage. So always good to see, right? So now let's go to, I know that these guys are level 1, but even so, we will go to, which one has this one looks like it has the lowest. Urgh. That was so lame. Open the Jugular, my foot. Right? So I just used the buff, the Whirling Dervish buff. And this one is kind of nice because even if you use a movement power, you also regain your Wrath. So essentially it seems that, like so many characters, she's going to have essentially two major builds, either based around the acrobatic powers or the adamantium powers, just depending on which ones you happen to prefer. And that obviously depends on which, if any, uniques you're able to find. If they're going to be adding more to better use one or the other, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so either way, I think both of them are pretty cool, but I am personally more partial to the adamantium claws, so I'm going to power all of these up. Definitely got to get this up to max. And I know I see people have typed some stuff, so I'll be right there to take a look at things. Incidentally, for now at least, I'm going to keep just one in her signature because I mean, it's good, but I don't know if it's so good with such a long cooldown and so many of her really powerful adamantium claws abilities being able to just not only with a very short cooldown or no cooldown, but simply being exceedingly strong just overall. I know I'm not very articulate right now, but either way, that's how I feel. Right, what else am I going to do? That's a pretty high cooldown, so we'll just split the 20 between these two. Obviously, again, it doesn't matter because I've got the DPS gear equipped right now, so it's not going to affect too many things. So we'll go ahead and put that there, and that there. So get my stance going. Alright, and now we'll have our Cleaving Claws. We will have our Rip to Shreds, Crimson Sweep, Slash and Hack. And then the Bloody Harvest. This is the one where she jumps, I think. Yeah, that's the one. I like that one. Right, and then, woo! Big Giant Face is back. And the buff we'll put there. Alright, and now we're ready for the March to Axis. And I prefer you kicking the Void there, No Rage. I think that's a lot better. All right, so we'll hop into the March to Axis one shot here, and while I'm in there, I am going to discuss a little bit about the cloning process and all this good stuff. Because, as I'm sure all of you watching are aware, one thing to note is that X-23 is technically a clone of Wolverine. But again, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, she cannot be considered a true clone simply because if she was a true clone, then she would actually be a male. Now, I don't know what the official word is because I saw two different things. I read her Wikipedia page, and on the Wikipedia page, it said that the Y chromosome of a DNA sample that these people had from Wolverine had been damaged. So the Y chromosome was no longer there, and they could only make females. But then I saw on the X-23 forums earlier today or sometime yesterday maybe that what actually happened in the comics was they tried 22 times to make a male version of a male clone of Wolverine, but none of them worked. Oh wow, they're bigger now. Ah, locked on. Do we not? Do we still know what to do here? There, we can still go around there. Perfect. All right. So apparently the first 22 were supposed to be male clones and none of them worked. And then when they tried to do it with a female instead, it finally worked. So either way, whatever it was, she was the 23rd attempt to make a clone of Wolverine, and she still had the bone claws and all that kind of stuff. For those who aren't aware, you can actually see it fairly clearly. She has 2 claws in each of her hands instead of Wolverine's 3, and you can't see them right now, but she also has claws in her feet as well, 1 in each foot. And oh, I forgot to show off her ultimate. See, now I feel like a terrible person. That's the trigger scent. I'll do that at the very end. Don't worry. I'll do it with Red Skull. So I know I'm a terrible person for not showing it right now. Either way, for now, where was I? Right, cloning. So for me personally, it doesn't make a lot of sense because not only would she supposedly be a man if she was a clone of Wolverine, the explanation of a Y chromosome being completely destroyed in a sample makes no sense. Because if you have a DNA sample of somebody, then you either have a bunch of cells or you have DNA that's already been taken and done, all that good stuff. The problem is that typically to get a DNA sample for cloning, you only use a single cell. And I highly doubt that whatever single cell people were trying to clone Wolverine with was had a randomly, arbitrarily destroyed Y chromosome. It doesn't make any sense. But again, how much real science can you inject into comic books? Who cares? I don't care. That's why I'm talking about it. For the purposes of this, though, if you've got some kind of sample, of whether it was a blood sample or whatever from Wolverine, then it would have been, or it should have been, multiple cells. So you should have been able to find at least one that would have been good. And you could have made a clone. So, strictly speaking, X-23 is not a clone. At best, she is a genetically engineered mutant. I know it doesn't make sense to say that because, of course, she's a mutant. She's X-23. But a mutant variation of Wolverine. And a couple of fun things that we know. I know it hasn't been mentioned too much in the comics, at least not to my knowledge, but the X gene itself was apparently, as far as I know, was apparently put into human beings or human life, whatever it happens to be, whatever you want to call it, a long, long time ago by a race of aliens. And it is randomly and somewhat arbitrarily activated in several different people. So that's why you get X genes. So incidentally, supposedly also why the X-Men are called X-Men, although I've also heard it's because Professor Xavier's name starts with an X. Either way, one thing that we can be sure of is that the X chromosome does not contain the X gene because, or the Y chromosome does not contain the X gene because otherwise she wouldn't be a mutant. But of course that would also mean that it would be genetically impossible to have any male mutants as well, which, you know, we don't have. We see tons of female mutants. One thing I am curious about that I didn't see anywhere in either the comics that I read, I know innocence is one of the big things for X-23's origin, and unfortunately I haven't read it, but a lot of people were discussing it. Okay, and also just a quick note, this is where I bugged out when I was playing with Magneto. We have to take out 2 Hulkbusters, and then after they're both done, then we should be able to go on to Red Skull. So we'll see if I can actually do it. Anyway, where was I? The other X gene, I'm not certain where it came from. The prevailing theory is probably that they simply copied Wolverine's X gene that was or X chromosome that was already there, and just made another one of it. And lo and behold, look, now we have 2 X genes in there for a female. And I don't really buy that, simply because any human, be they mutant or otherwise, excuse me, would have a very, very difficult time living with only a single copied X chromosome. It has happened before. There's a serious malformation during different biological processes called non-disjunction, and if that happens, it means that you have an inappropriate number of chromosomes, be they autosomal or sex chromosome. And one of the cases or one of the diseases that can cause is actually Down syndrome, because you have 3 copies of chromosome 21. So you can have multiple X chromosomes and a Y chromosome. That's actually called Turner syndrome. But as far as X-23 is concerned, and knowing where the other X chromosome came from would be very interesting to know. And also another reason why she is not, or should not be, considered a clone of Wolverine. Because it just doesn't make sense. She has a large portion of his DNA, and obviously the same mutant abilities, or at least very similar mutant abilities, but I would never call her a clone of Wolverine regardless. That said, we actually have cloned humans, believe it or not. But don't tell anybody I told you that. It's published, you can look it up. Yes, it worked! Excellent. Now I can finally go and take out Red Skull. So for those of you who haven't been in the one-shot here, what you have to do, you have to go to the signal disruptors, and that's where the 2 Hulkbusters are. And once you do that, then this part is supposed to open up, which leads up to the Red Skull. So we'll see if his medallion is working yet. But anyway, back a little bit to the cloning. It would be interesting to see as well the surrogate too, because the surrogate does have a lot to do with an actual clone and some of the DNA that they get, particularly related to the ovum, the egg that gets the nucleus, assuming that they used the process known as somatic cell nuclear transfer in order to clone Wolverine. Incidentally, another reason why the whole Y chromosome thing doesn't make any sense. Ooh, I haven't seen this yet. Oh, man. Oh, creepy. Oh, dang. Well, that's unpleasant. It's okay. I've got Dr. Doom. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and use her ultimate now, just so you guys can see it. Her ultimate is the Trigger Scent, which is something that she was trained with during her time essentially in the prison, which was a hospital. But it's extremely powerful. It's absolutely ridiculous. You regenerate both your wrath and your health, and you double your attack speed. You get it for 20 seconds, and you get a massive overall health regen as well. So, just ridiculous. I assume, I'm going to guess that I can't really be in here without being hurt. Or without hurting him. Yeah, I can't. So I'll take out this Hulkbuster prototype. Oh, I guess I don't even have to. Trigger Scent! Boom! Die! Oh, yeah. And the idea with the Trigger Scent is that anybody who has this particular Trigger Scent smells like they should die, for lack of a better term. Bam! Oh, right. It does still have the Man-8 medallion. So that's kind of funny. But we do get both the eye and the heart of Demon Fire, which is nice. Alright. Yeah, go ahead and upgrade my ultimate. So there, see, this is the nimble boots for X-23 is Storm's bustier, which is a bit weird, and the bodysuit is Storm's cape. So obviously that's going to be fixed soon enough. But either way, it's kind of cool. And and then we do have the Manate medallion.
Pill here.
Hooray! We did it! Go us! We're awesome. And a shiny. Yay! Chest of Odin's bounty. They just tossed all of the events here. Not that I'm complaining. I'm totally happy with that. Let me drop this. Yay! All right. Well, so that's the March to Axis one shot. I know that I don't know if the comic series is actually finished yet. I thought that it was. I personally have not read it yet. I do want to though. I know it's very exciting, and it's supposedly going to lead up to the next raid. So I'm pretty excited about that. But either way, we've got our great and powerful Wolverine clone X-23, and incidentally, they do show one of her other costumes as well. This one right here. I don't know what it's called. I'm not familiar with her costumes, but that's one of them. I know if you got the advanced pack where she was included as a bonus character, you get an extra like 3 costumes or something like that for her. It's ridiculous. So either way, I know I didn't talk too much about the science. I don't know if you guys came from the forums, but I didn't really want to focus on it too much, simply because I know that it can be rather dry and somewhat boring for most people. But if you have questions about it at all, or anything else that I talked about here, then feel free to put them in the chat here, or you can message me on the forums or whatever. Or I'm actually going to be heading right into Midtown Madness next for Magneto, because I got to level him up, and Midtown Madness is the perfect time to do it. So I'll be online on the live servers. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed my little preview here for X-23 and her powers, as well as the Axis one-shot, and just a little bit about the science behind cloning and how potentially we could have gotten an X-23, but she is not a clone of any means of Wolverine. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked it, and I will see you next time.